Gemini 3.5 Pro's context window is literally double Claude Fable 5's. 2 million tokens versus 1 million, that's the biggest raw spec gap between these two models, and it actually changes which one you should be paying for right now. Both models just dropped, and people are already paying real money for them, so I went through official docs, benchmark reports, and community data to compare Gemini 3.5 Pro versus Claude Fable 5 across 4 real tests. No vendor money, no spin, just source numbers. Honestly, the pricing comparison is where things get weird, because the cheaper model on input is actually the more expensive one on output, and which side of that trade-off hurts you depends entirely on how your workload is built. So this comparison is really for developers and teams picking one of these as their main API. If you're processing big documents, running multi-step reasoning tasks, or watching token costs closely, the wrong pick here could mean slower outputs, worse answers, or a bigger bill every single month. That's a concrete consequence, not a hypothetical. Test 1 is context and long context handling. What actually goes wrong when a model's window is too small is that your app silently truncates the document. The model answers based on a partial read, and you don't even know it got the wrong chunk. That silent failure is what makes this dimension so worth checking before you commit to a model. The raw numbers here are pretty clear. Gemini 3.5 Pro comes in at 2 million tokens, Claude Fable 5 sits at 1 million, so it's 2x larger on the spec sheet. Bear in mind Gemini's long context recall accuracy has no published benchmark, and one production report flagged a 3x latency penalty when actually using that full window. So the spec is real, but the real-world behavior is still kind of a black box. Gemini 3.5 Pro takes test 1. I was honestly expecting the gap to be smaller, maybe a slight edge, but 2 million versus 1 million is just not close. If you need to feed a massive codebase or a long document into a single prompt, Gemini is the only one that can even do it, and that puts Gemini 3.5 Pro up 1-0 over Claude Fable 5. Test 2 is reasoning and problem solving. The failure mode here is genuinely frustrating because the model gives you a confident answer that's just wrong on step 3 of a 5-step chain, and you don't catch it until something downstream breaks. When that happens, in production, you're debugging logic errors instead of shipping, and that costs real time. I looked at every published benchmark I could find for this one, and what surprised me is how one-sided the available data is. Claude Fable 5 posted a 91 out of 100 on the Senior Engineer benchmark and scored 59.86 on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. Gemini 3.5 Pro, no published figures on either test. Community reports suggest Gemini struggles more with complex, multi-step reasoning, but that's anecdotal, so I'm not scoring it as a clean win. This one's a tie, and honestly the kind of tie that's frustrating rather than fair, because Gemini's reasoning data is just missing. I was expecting at least one published benchmark from Google, and there isn't one, so the score stays at Gemini 3.5 Pro 1, Claude Fable 5-0, with one tied, and that data gap is something you should know about going in. Test 3 is pricing and efficiency. The concrete failure mode here is picking the wrong model for your token ratio and watching your bill climb without understanding why. If you're mostly sending big documents in and getting short answers out, input cost dominates. If you're generating long outputs, the output price is what kills you, and getting this wrong means you're just quietly overpaying every single day. Alright, so here's what the numbers look like. Claude Fable 5 is cheaper on input at $10 per $1 million tokens, official and published. Gemini 3.5 Pro is estimated at $12 to $15 per million on input, so Claude wins that side. Flip to output and it reverses. Gemini is estimated at $36 to $45 per million. Claude is $50 official. Bear in mind Gemini's pricing is still estimated, not official, so that spread could shift. This one's a tie because neither model is cheaper across the board. I was expecting one clear winner on price, and what I got instead is a genuine split. Claude Fable 5 wins on input. Gemini 3.5 Pro wins on output. Your actual cost depends entirely on your workload's token ratio, which is kind of annoying, but also just honest. So the running score is Gemini 3.5 Pro 1, Claude Fable 5-0, 2 tied. Test 4 is latency and speed. The failure mode here is real and annoying. You build a workflow that feels snappy in testing. Then you push a large context request, and suddenly you're waiting 3 times longer for a response. That 3x slowdown isn't theoretical. It was reported in a production case with Gemini's 2 million token window, and that kind of latency can break user experience fast. What I found here is frustrating in a different way. Claude Fable 5 has published speed numbers, 63.4 tokens per second at max effort, and one source puts it at 73 tokens per second, with a time to first token of 109 seconds as a known baseline. Gemini 3.5 Pro, no published latency figures at all. So I can tell you what Claude does, but comparing the two just isn't possible with the data that's out there right now. Tie again, same story as reasoning. Gemini's data is just missing, so there's nothing to actually compare. I was expecting Google to have at least some published throughput numbers by now, and they don't. Claude Fable 5 at least gives you a known 63 tokens per second to plan around, so the final running score is Gemini 3.5 Pro 1, Claude Fable 5 0, 3 tied. Okay, so where does Gemini 3.5 Pro clearly win? Two things. The context window. 2 million tokens is the largest in the industry right now, double what Claude Fable 5 can handle. So if your use case involves feeding in huge documents or massive codebases in a single call, Gemini is the only option. And output token cost. At an estimated $36 to $45 per million, it's meaningfully cheaper than Claude's $50 when you're generating a lot of text. And where does Claude Fable 5 win? 3 concrete things. Reasoning benchmarks. 91 out of 100 on Senior Engineer, 59.86 on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, with community reports backing up stronger multi-step logic. Input token cost, $10 per million is official and published, cheaper than Gemini's estimated $12 to $15. And transparency. Claude gives you a real speed baseline at 63 to 73 tokens per second, so you can actually plan your infrastructure around it. Honestly, I was expecting one model to pull ahead cleanly, and what I got was a split. So here's the decision rule. If you're processing massive documents and need that 2 million token window, go Gemini 3.5 Pro, because no other model at this tier gives you that capacity. If you need reliable deep reasoning, cheaper input costs, and published performance data you can actually plan around, Claude Fable 5 is the safer pick. 2 million tokens or proven reasoning, that's the call.